This dish actually came about while I was working on some ideas for brunch at Suerte. I had been wanting to work on kind of an individual sized tart. I'm utilizing a lot of the really good produce that we're getting at our garden at Este right now, and then that's kind of where this all started. My name is Derrick Flynn. I'm the pastry chef at Suerte here in Austin, Texas, and today we'll be making a brioche tart with roasted vegetables and chorizo. All right, so first we're gonna go ahead and get our veggies ready for the cream and to roast. So I'll go ahead and start with an onion, go ahead and large dice them. So next we're gonna go ahead and slice our garlic. We'll need about 8 cloves for this. Because in the end, everything is going to get pureed down. Just a nice little rough chop for these should be sufficient. So for the potatoes, you don't want anything too small. And we're gonna cut these into fairly irregular pieces. So it's important to go ahead and pre-roast these because even though the tart itself will bake for about 20 to 25 minutes, it's really not enough time to cook all of the potatoes. Go ahead and keep the nice mushroom heads for roasting, and then we'll go ahead and use the stems to make the cream. I really love how much woodier and earthier these trumpet mushrooms are, but obviously if you can't find these in your supermarket, creminis or anything like that will totally suffice. We'll go ahead and get everything ready to start cooking. Add some of our potatoes right now. Try not to overcrowd them too much. Obviously feel free to split this up into 2 trays when you're doing it at home. And then we'll hit it with a little salt and pepper. I went ahead and preheated the oven to 375 degrees. So we'll go ahead and pop these in for anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes. Really the goal is to make sure that the veggies are cooked all the way through. Doing everything the day before is going to really make everything infinitely easier on day 2. We'll go ahead and throw our water in the bowl, followed by the yeast. And then you can go ahead and go with all of your other dries next. I will say though, please, please, please try and make sure that you add your yeast and your salt as far away from each other as possible. If you add them together, you might end up ruining your dough. And now we're going milk powder, whole wheat flour, salt, and then we'll throw the eggs right on top. You're gonna go ahead and mix it on medium-low for about 15 minutes. Get your hands in the flour, pinch off a little bit. Go right back in, and then you're gonna start to work it with your fingertips. Now that our gluten's looking good, I'm gonna go ahead and just flip our dough, make sure that there's nothing stuck at the bottom, and then we'll go ahead and slowly start to incorporate our butter on low speed. One thing to note is that it's super important that your butter is a little tempered. You wanna be able to squeeze through it. Colder butter is going to be a nightmare to try and incorporate. We're gonna go ahead and increase the speed to medium-high for about 8 to 10 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and just turn this up a little bit so you can hear the noise that I'm looking for to check for doneness. So that slapping noise, that's an indicator that you are either ready or very close. So at this point, we're gonna go ahead and do one more gluten test to make sure that we are there. And we should have a much more secure window than we did prior to adding the butter. So this one should not tear. So I'm just gonna incorporate all that little bit of flour, and then we're gonna pop it into this grease bowl, covered for 1 hour at room temp. So from here, you're gonna go ahead and just do some tucking. And then that seam that you've created will now be the base. So just give it a nice little flip. All right. And then while this proofs, we'll go ahead and start our mushroom cream. We're gonna go ahead and get the pot started on low-medium heat and get our oil and butter in there. But now that our butter and oil has melted together, we'll go ahead and add our garlic and onions. I do find that using a Dutch oven like this, you're gonna get some really good caramelization and not necessarily like a ton of sticking at the bottom of the pot, so that's another reason why I love using this. Just add a little bit of salt. That salt's gonna help pull some of that extra moisture in the onions. You can add a little bit of black pepper now too. Now our garlic and onions are nice and translucent. They've been cooking on medium for about 5-7 minutes. Okay, and then just like before, you can add a little bit of extra salt just to help with that extra moisture that the mushrooms are holding on to right now. We're gonna try and get a little bit of color on the mushrooms and the onions. We'll go ahead and add our milk and cream and crank the heat all the way up to bring it to a boil. Once you get to a boil, you're gonna drop it to a nice simmer for 15 minutes. Also at this time, you can go ahead and add your bay leaf and your thyme. So now that everything has been simmering for about 15 minutes, we'll go ahead and kill the heat, add the chev, and then puree it from there. So now we're gonna go ahead and transfer it into the blender, season it up, and then blitz it smooth. Do not forget to fish your bay leaf and your thyme out. That way you don't end up with string in your cream. As it cools, obviously the goat cheese in here is gonna help thicken it up, but also the onions and the garlic that we've sweated in that butter act as natural thickeners. So as it cools, it'll thicken up really nicely. So it's nice and thick, and what you're looking for, if you take your finger, back of your spoon, you wanna make sure that it doesn't drip down. So this is gonna be a nice consistency for when it's ready to go in the tart. Cream is ready to go, we'll chill it down, and next we'll take the dough that's been sitting overnight and roll it out. Because the gluten in the brioche has been worked so much, this is gonna be a fairly sturdy dough at this point, so it's not gonna need a ton of flour on the table. If you start off in the shape that you wanna end up in, it will make rolling it out a lot easier. We essentially wanna roll this out into a rectangle shape with about enough overhang for it to hit the table that you're working on, because all of that trim is gonna get tucked underneath. Now go ahead and transfer your brioche over. So all that overhang we were talking about earlier, we're gonna just tuck it underneath. Our dough has been proofing for an hour, and now we're gonna get it ready to go into the oven. One thing I did wanna show y'all is how to check your dough for readiness. Essentially, you wanna take like a floured fingertip, press into the dough, and you want it to spring back 2/3 of the way. So first we'll go ahead and spread our mushroom cream on. You want a nice even layer, but try not to pile too much on, because then you'll just weigh the tart down during the bake. So we're not gonna go all the way to the edge. I would say leave maybe like a 1/2 inch of a border. And then from here, you're gonna go ahead and just start layering on your veggies. So we'll start with mushrooms. One thing to take note of is think of your mushroom cream as glue, essentially. Any veggies that are sticking to it will be nice and adhered, so that when you go to cut it later on, they won't just completely fall apart. And now for some potatoes. Try not to press them into the dough too much, but go ahead and secure them a little bit. And now we're going ahead and layering on the chorizo. This egg wash is gonna give the dough that it's touching just like some really good, nice brown color. Just like the mushroom cream at the base, this cheese is going to also help all of the toppings kind of stick on there. So a little bit of black pepper on the border. So I've preheated the oven to 350 degrees. We'll go ahead and pop this guy in for about 20 to 25 minutes. It's nice and toasty. You can smell the chorizo, the mushroom cream at the bottom. Like there's a lot of like really good smells going on. And then just to make it even more extra, we're gonna just brush the edges with some butter. And you wanna make sure that you're doing this right out of the oven so the brioche has a chance to kind of absorb the butter that you're adding to it. If you're cutting it while it's still a little on the warm side, you're gonna want to kind of use one hand to secure the toppings from kind of sliding around as your knife goes through it. And we're just gonna garnish it with some thyme, some chives, and some parsley, a little bit of lemon juice. The brioche is super fluffy. That pepper that's on the edge is gonna bring some really nice spice. The mushroom cream that's on top is just heavy enough. Then you've got some really nice texture from the roasted mushrooms, those crispy edges of the potatoes, some nice spice from the chorizo, and then that lemon juice that you finish with just really brightens it all up. I'm Derrick Flynn. Again, I'm the pastry chef at Suerte here in Austin, and I hope to see you again.